Alex Purtell. Do you have a light?
All right. Well, I first want to thank Kevin, Laura, and Sean for dealing with my procrastination. I'm an entrepreneur, and we like to wait and do things to the last minute. So they put up with me when getting this presentation, done. So I thank you so much for inviting me here. I can for sure say that I am. You always know when you're in the right room when everybody here is smarter than you. So thank you so much for inviting me today. So I'm Alex Purtell. I'm the Accelerator Director at Lumos Innovation. We're an accelerator here in Columbus where we invest in early stage startups and founders particularly. So this will be a very content heavy presentation. So I'm going to do a deep dive into actually what we're actually going over. I had an opportunity to meet a few of you, so I'm going to introduce myself. Who the hell am I? Why 90% of companies actually fail, what a good startup actually looks like, what metrics you should focus on when actually starting your first company. Go over a few financing terms for early stage founders, talk a lot about the startup ecosystem here, talk about how Lumos fits into that ecosystem and how we can help you, and then introduce you to one of our portfolio companies, Vibe, who's really crushing it right now with doing pilots with Kroger, Giant Eagle, Fresh Time, and a bunch of alcohol beverage brands. And then leave you guys with 4 tips, for success when actually launching your company. So I have a few goals here today. The first is to inspire all of you to take a shot and start your own company. This is a room full of very, very talented people. And I know you guys all have encountered problems in your own business, or even have some of your own ideas that you've thought about going forward with, but never have actually done it. So I'm here to give you some resources and actually be a resource for you when you actually start your company. If that's not good for you, I'd like you to at least learn and educate and talk about, what you can do to actually start your first company and how to actually do that. Lastly, I just want to be a resource. Like I said, this is a room full of very talented people, and I hope one of you at least thinks about starting your next gig. And like I said, it's a very content-heavy slide, so please raise your hand and ask questions if something comes up. If it's too heavy, we'll talk about it after. So a bit about me. I was born in Cincinnati in 1987. I went to Ohio State, or originally went to OU, and then I transferred to OSU. I was originally studying biology to be a doctor. I was forcing myself to really like medicine, and I really liked the idea of being a doctor, but I was awful at it. I was so bad at OChem and chemistry and everything. OChem 2, I probably got a D in that, I think. It was not a good outcome for me. Unfortunately, heart disease runs in my family, and during that same time, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. And because I was from Cincinnati and I was going to school at Ohio State, my insurance didn't cover me. So Wexner, he's a great guy, but he charged me $20,000 in medical bills. It was really awesome. So I subsequently dropped out of school because I worked my whole life, and I couldn't put my parents on this burden of paying off $20,000 in medical bills. So I dropped out of school and really worked to really pay those off. So, sorry, this is where I look sad and to the right a little bit. So when I dropped out of school, I actually was a model at Jack Threads. Jack Threads is a huge company now. They're a local startup. I was getting my hair cut, and one of their guys recruited me. So it's very easy to stand and look sad to the right. You just have to frown a little bit. So anyway, when I dropped out of school, I got my hands on every entrepreneurship book I could find. And I was like, I couldn't force myself to be a doctor anymore, so I started reading everything about entrepreneurship. I started my first company in 2008. That's actually an actual product picture of our first company. It was a rehab device that told you actually how much you were lifting when you're using your exercise bands. We were able to sell close to 10,000 of them, but turns out you can't build it. So I had 10,000 pre-orders that I couldn't fulfill. So it failed. But I taught myself digital marketing and actually how to fill your sales funnel for something that I couldn't even build. So I learned everything digital marketing. I eventually, after my startup failed, I went back to school and finished that in a year and a half. I got myself, a couple $20,000 in debt, and then I got 3 really good mentors out of school. But then I started jumping into various startup consulting, which led me to where I am now. So that's a few of the companies I've worked with. Actually, you can't see the one, Nikola Labs. They're a technology company working on wireless power. I joined an angel investment fund that led me to where I am right now. So we ran Columbus's last startup accelerator that was called 10X. I started a healthcare IT company called Recovo that we commercialized out of the school. It was based on a 4-year clinical trial. And that leads me to here now, which is Lumos, which we started 6 weeks ago. So what is Lumos? So how many are familiar with accelerators? That's pretty good audience. All right, great. So accelerators, essentially what you do is you take your idea and we put you through a gauntlet. And we showcase traction to investors and angel investment community in 10 weeks. So that's part of what Lumos does, is we're largely made up of the accelerator and our first fund. We also have a nonprofit, all of our technology companies, which is an incubator, so we give all of our companies actually time after they go through the accelerator. But also we do, which makes us unique, is we work on corporate innovation. So what's very sexy right now is these companies want to learn to operate like a startup. Because startups operate lean, they save money and time, and they actually want to learn how to do that. So part of our services at Lumos is we work with brands like this that want to learn how to take their ideas internally and bring them to market at a faster rate. So there's one thing that we know at Lumos is we know early stage. It's a team of 8 of us. I am one of those 8. And we know how to start early stage companies. That's going to be a theme that I'm going to talk about throughout this whole time. I don't know how to take a company to IPO, but I know how to get it from 0 to 1. So back to our agenda here. Why do 90% of companies fail? So I talked to a few of you before. Is anybody here working on their own company? Boom, I didn't talk to you. So can you tell me what it is in a couple sentences?
We're a Facebook bot company for delivery.
Okay, Facebook bot company.
So
you...
It's like Postmates, but through Messenger.
Okay, so if I want to order something, I order it through Messenger and Facebook. So you connect, it's like an API or an algorithm that connects brands to consumers to deliver anything.
It connects to delivery drivers as well and restaurants, so everyone's kept it moved through messages.
Cool. It's way over my head, man. You're too smart for me. Okay, so I'm going to use that as an example throughout this whole presentation. You're lucky. So you're going to get an insight to our process. I'm going to use your company as an example. Luckily, you're sitting in the front row. All right, so there's one reason why companies fail, and that is you are building something that nobody cares about. I'm going to keep looking at you because you're right in the front row and you just volunteered. So it's the sole reason is everybody has problems, but is your problem actually worth solving? Are people going to pay for your problem? I don't know. I hope so. You look like a smart guy. Is this guy your co-founder right here? Yeah. So you guys look like smart guys. So part of the process of actually figuring out if your company is worth building is you talk to people. So this is what we do. So usually I say, it's like, hey, all right, this is your idea. I'm going to talk to this side of the room. I have this idea for a Facebook Messenger app. You guys, you go to North Star. You're on Facebook all the time. Don't you wish you could order your food through Facebook? Do you think that's a good idea? Oh man, they all shake their head. Guess what? I don't know who they are, but they don't want to insult me by saying no, because I don't know them, right? And your friends actually starting your idea, they're going to tell you this same time, oh, that's brilliant, man. That's so good. All right, there's a different way you can ask that same question to get that same outcome. It's like, hey, do you guys get food delivered? How do you go about getting your food delivered? Do you call people up? Do you actually use an app? You use Pizza Hut? All right, that's good. You know, they have an app, right? So you go to their website and you actually figure out, you know, what you're working on, right? So that's a feature that we're working on. You hear that? So
We'll send you pictures of it.
so same result, and I got to see exactly what they do now, and if it's actually a problem that is in that process that makes sense for me to fill with your solution. You know, I don't know. It's same result, right? I tell them my idea, and then same process. I just ask them ask the question a little bit different. So it's something that we're stuck in our own heads about. It's called confirmation bias. So my idea is awesome, and I don't want to accept that my idea is not awesome. So whatever they say, even though it could be completely wrong, I think that I'm always right. So you have to accept the data, and this is what every early stage startup does, is they don't accept the data because they care about what they're working on, which is awesome, and that's one of the things we look for in investing in companies. But they get stuck in their own head, and they think that something is worth building. So, you know, right? Explain that same problem to this left side of the room over here, and they're like, oh yeah, definitely, absolutely, 100% use that. I don't know them. You know, actually talking to strangers is better than talking to your friends. But because they don't want to insult me unless they're dicks, but you know, whatever, which, I mean, you tell me your idea, I'll probably tell you it sucks. But they don't want to insult me, so they'll say, yes, I definitely want that. And that is confirmation bias. It's not, you know, it's a whole bunch of nopes, right? You don't want to get in this cognitive loop. So there's a few ways you can actually test if your idea is worth doing just by talking to people. You ask for their opinion. It's like, hey, you know, I'm building this messaging app that connects deliverers to actually, you know, food. You know, and that's the process I want to test. So you ask for one little step more without building anything yet, right? So I'm going to test out this Facebook messaging app, right? I'm going to give you $5, which is half of your order. Would you place an order so I can test it out? Maybe. They might not. You know, if they're nice to you, they're at least going to test it. They're putting their cash on the line. They're taking the time out of their day to actually do that. And then guess what? If they don't like it, you ask for an intro to somebody that might like it. That's the easiest way without building anything. I'm just talking to this left side of the room that is something that's worth going forward with. It's very, very easy why 90% of companies fail is you're not solving a problem that's actually worth solving. You know, we get stuck in our own heads that our solution is the end-all, be-all for all technology, and it's really not. It's not that creative. So let's look at this startup right here. All right. So this is a use case of this startup called Snow Devil. Shout some ideas out. Actually, what you think they're solving. Like, what problem are they solving right here? Cheap snowboards. Okay. You know, I'm a skier. I don't snowboard, but you know, maybe I want to buy some skis on this website. It looks like, you know, they're giving an easy way for me to buy snowboards. Looks like they might be based in Canada or something with that maple leaf. They sell bindings, whatever. So this is actually a startup I hope all of you know, and this is their original MVP, their minimal viable product. And the founder of this company lists products online, so he figured out a way to do it himself. This company turned into Shopify. So Tobias, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but he's the CEO of Shopify. They recently went public last year, now valued at $3.5 billion. They had one solution, is he wanted to list prototypes. He wanted to list his own own snowboards online. There's no easy way to do that, so he made it himself, right? Turns out it worked out okay. Last year, They IPO'd at 1.26 billion. But that's great for Tobias. He's a great guy. He's a programmer by trade. Apparently a snowboarder. I don't know how to take a company to IPO, but I know right here. So let's look into what happened in 2010. So it's very easy, right? Tobias, the founder of Shopify, had this simple problem, even though he was a programmer, is anybody selling anything online, whether it's a product or whatever it is, there was no easy way for anybody to list products online. So he made a solution to that. That's actually the back end of Shopify. Anybody that wanted to list anything online, he gave you the solution to do that. And they focused on one thing early on, which was user acquisition. So 2006, he convinced his uncle, who was wealthy, to give him $250,000. I wish I had that uncle. They had less than 100 stores. They had a software as a service, SaaS model. They charged per month. Their lowest solution was $29. Their highest one was $300. And then they take a transaction fee. So they focused solely on growth early on after they built their product. 4 years later, they have 1,000 stores. Those stores are doing 125 million. He raises $7 million. Year after that, he doubles again, doing 250 million. He implements his growth hack, 14-day free trial, and shit fucking takes off, right? So he has 2013, 2 years before they IPO, he has 81,000 stores. He's doing 1.6 billion in sales, all because he started with this one simple problem. He focused on user acquisition, he knew his audience, and he was able to make a 100% growth rate every year, right? Again, I don't know how to take a company to IPO. There's a company, I think one guy here, is a company called Crosschecks and Cover My Meds. They probably know what an IPO looks like. But I know this end right here, what happens in 2010. So let's take a look at this. So Shopify and Tobias, again, the CEO of Shopify, he goes out to the Bay and wants to raise some money to take his company to the next level. He goes into Bessemer Venture Partners, which is a $4 billion fund. He goes into First Mark Capital and Felicius Ventures. It's like, hey, I want some money for my company. They start asking him, hey, what do your user metrics look like? What does your sales funnel look like? How many people are buying stuff through your website? And he had no idea. He's like, I just built something that I thought was cool and people were finding me organically. So I remember reading this article. He's like, I went back and actually looked up to all these metrics and actually showcased to them, right? So usually when you go into Bessemer, $4 billion fund, they're going to tell you this. Your company sucks. I'm not ready for you right now. So they're going to tell you you're not investable. So you got to prove them wrong, which is what Tobias did. He went back and wrote down all of those questions that they were asking him and proved them wrong with his metrics. So these are some metrics that venture capitalists or VCs care about. Site traffic is one, retention rate, how many people keep coming back to your website. What do your active users look like? How many, if you have an app, what are they doing every day? The biggest ones here, and it's not your mom, it's month over month and year over year. Market size, what is Shopify's attainable addressable market? Your growth rate, what are you doing each month? How much does it cost to acquire stuff? But there's really 4 that most VCs care about. First one is probably market size. How large is your addressable market? People buy stuff all the time and deliver stuff all the time, right? How many people actually buy stuff that deliver, right? So that's your market size. How much does it cost for you to acquire a customer? What are you growing? Each of those people that buy something online, how often are they doing it? Month over month, week over week? And then how much money are you making each month? That's pretty basic, is what most of them, all of them, care about and what they're asked questions for. Your growth rate will fix all of these metrics. Your market size could be huge, but if you're crushing it week over week, say you get 10 people this week to use your product right here. Next week, it's 1,000. Week after that, it's 4,000. It's skyrocketing. VCs will skip all of those metrics because your growth rate is insane. Right? Periscope is an example of this. Their growth rate was crazy high. I don't know if anybody uses Periscope anymore, but it was insane. They raised a couple $100 million. Good for them. But still, these guys, this Bessemer at Shopify, that made this first early on investment, these are the best guys in the world, and they're still wrong 8 out of 10 times. If this was baseball, they'd be in the minor leagues, right? So these are the best in the world, and they can't get it right. There's one reason why they can't get it right, and there's this giant void in any investment. It's the market trends. I don't know if people are going to actually order things tomorrow. They might figure out a new way. It might just be completely automated. I might have a chip. This is next level stuff. I might have a chip in my stomach that tells me when I'm hungry. It automatically orders based on my ordering habits. That's cool shit. Steal that. VCs can't get inside your head, and they can't test actually what people are going to do. So they have this giant gap in risk. In order for them to cover their risk, they're going to want to own. Your idea sounds really cool. You guys are really smart people. Anybody invest in you, they're going to own 20 to 25% of your company. That's how it works. Any risk, they're going to want to get a payoff. So in order for them to make it worth their time, they're going to want to own 20, 25% of that. So let's go back to Shopify and Tobias. He's a smart dude. He ended up owning close to 15% of his company. At the time of IPO, they're $165 million. That's pretty decent. He did a good job. But you can see Bessemer, who led that round, they own close to 30, and that's $343 million. First Mark, which was one of the lower ones. His uncle, actually, Clister Credit Corp over there, he did pretty well on $84 million. It's all right, So there's one thing that we discovered is that founders don't understand. I love that picture. Founders don't understand, financing. So let's dive a little bit into that. So this will be an intro to getting your company funded and what early stage investment actually looks like.
When a company's just starting out, often when its product is a little more than an idea on a cocktail napkin, it starts collecting what's known as seed funding from investors. Historically, these early stage investors receive a share of the company in return for their investment. But a founder can opt instead for what's called a convertible note. A convertible note is a loan that an investor can give to a company that automatically converts into shares of stock only after a company completes its next round of capital. One of the biggest reasons a founder might opt for a convertible note is that it doesn't require them to give away any control of their company before its Series A round of funding. And because a convertible note is a loan, not an investment, it can cut out a lot of complicated and costly paperwork. One of the biggest reasons an investor may agree to a convertible note is that once the company does hit its Series A round, founders will often offer stock to its convertible note holders at a discounted price. Sounds like a win-win for investors and founders, right? Not always. With standard convertible notes, investors receive the same number of shares regardless of whether the company ends up being worth $1 million or $20 million. As a result, the earliest investors may end up getting penalized even though they took on the most risk. To address this concern, investors often request what's called a conversion valuation cap. Here's how it works. If the founder and investor agree that the ceiling on the value of the startup is $5 million, but the startup ends up being valued at $10 million, the convertible note holder will receive stock at half the price of other investors during the Series A funding. But agreeing to caps can hurt founders, especially if their Series A round is smaller than expected. Caps set a maximum price investors will pay for shares, but they don't set a minimum price, forcing the founder to take all the risk when it comes to pricing. For example, if your company ends up being worth half as much as you thought it'd be once it's time for your Series A, your convertible note holders still get the same amount of shares no matter what, meaning they now own twice as much of your company than they would have had you opted for a traditional seed valuation. So if you're a founder, should you use convertible notes or go the traditional equity route? On one hand, convertible notes allow founders to retain full control of a company until the Series A round, and it's generally cheaper and easier from a legal perspective. But when caps are used and investors demand valuation maximums but not minimums, it can make a startup wish it had gone the traditional equity pricing route. And if the company never gets to a Series A, it's now stuck with a loan it must repay with interest.
All right, so your idea for AI to deliver apps, deliver food to people, in order for you to get financing, that was a very layman's term of what it looks like to get financed. So there's a few terms to get financed if you're an early stage founder, right? So I'm an early stage guy. Lumos, we know early stage stuff. Uber right now, if you look at Series A financing where you're making $2 million plus a year, they're on Series E, I believe, where they're just insane amount of growth rate. But don't focus on that. Focus on the pre-seed and the seed rounds. And that's how much money you have to be making to get funded by that mechanism we just saw in the last video. And don't worry, we're going to post all of this after, so don't take notes. We'll post all of this, and I'm happy to talk to you about each individual term later. So there's a few ways, let's say for your idea, again, you guys are right here and you volunteered yourself for this pretty sick AI to deliver food to people. There's a few ways you can actually get money from people. There's a straight up equity deal where I'm an investor. I'm going to give you $200,000. Do you want it? Okay, you're going to give me a part of your company for that equity, for that percentage. That's as clear as it gets. You just saw a video on the convertible note side of things, which is pretty complicated, but for me to give you money to hedge my bet, I'm going to want a discount if you actually take off. It's that simple. It's really like it's complicated terms, but it's really I give you money early on, I'm going to get rewarded by a discount later. It's pretty much that simple. There's stock warrants where we give money to you up front, then you give us part of your company later, and we'll get into that in a bit. Then there's grants, which is essentially free money. Usually these come from educational institutes, foundations. These are all options to actually get your startup funded. Did you write those down? Just kidding. Plus. So Alex, this is complicated shit. I don't understand it, right? Where did I go to help, right? I mentioned that Lumos is an accelerator. So this is what an accelerator does, and this is great for early stage founders just like you guys, is we go through a 10 to 14 week program where you get access to all of our network, all of these investors, all of these great people doing these awesome things that have done it successfully before. These are investors, these are businesses that you get access to. At the end of that 14 weeks though, usually they kick you out the door. So it's, you get notified a week before and then you're out. See ya. Most of the accelerators give you upfront cash for a flat rated equity percentage from 6 to 10%, and then they give you one of those complicated convertible notes, which remember is not that complicated, it's just a discount later, for part of your company. Right? So who are the best accelerators in the country, right? So there's this company in the Bay called Y Combinator. They invested over 1,000 companies, 3.6 billion in exits. You probably have heard of Airbnb or Reddit. They went through at the early stage of Y Combinator. After Y Combinator, there's a company called Techstars. They have 20 locations internationally. Probably one of the most successful ones is DigitalOcean, which is a hosting platform. Females in the room might know ClassPass, or males, where you go and you get subscriptions to any gym class you want to go to. After that, there's 500 startups. Their goal is to invest in 500 companies. They've since surpassed that. So these are the best in the country. But we're in Columbus, and that's what this is about. So what's here? What are some accesses for you here, right? So this is Columbus from a 30,000-foot view. We're the #3 best city for millennials. Best places for you to launch your career. We're top for tech talent because of you. You guys all made up that number 17 ranking, right? And we're the fastest growing cities in the U.S. Number 13. There's this apartment. Everybody sees the apartment complex is just skyrocketing all over the place. Somehow we're able to fill these all the time. So these are the top employers here in Columbus. You have J.P. Morgan, Nationwide. Nationwide's across the street right here. Looking at their logo on that wall. Cardinal Health, Huntington, Battelle, A&F. A lot of big dynamo companies are based here. But remember, this is early stage startup stuff that we're talking about here. If you work at one of those companies, who here works at one of those companies I just listed? Right? You work at Nationwide, right? How long does it take you to take an internal idea to launch? Is this accurate? All right, you don't count. Usually on average, for any of those big companies that have billions of dollars that are publicly traded, it takes them 2 to 3 years minimum to get a product into market. It takes a startup, we like to say this at Lumos, it took Angry Birds 45 days to get to 50 million people. That was 5 dudes in a room that knew what they were doing. 50 million users takes the big dynamo.
Is that metric post-launch?
Yeah, that's post-launch, yeah. So they launched, and then 45 days later, they had 50 million. Yeah.
All right, so you said most startups fail because nobody cares about the problem they're solving. What problem was Angry Birds solving?
So gaming is a different realm, and I'm not an expert in gaming, but I would say people were bored and they were addicted. Yeah, see, there you go. So 45 days. So let's take that trend, right? This is a statistic off Inc., right? 52% of the Fortune 500 are now gone because startups are disrupting their industries. So this is, on the left, this is a lot of what Columbus is right here, right? We have Nationwide, we have the old way of doing business. P&G, based in Cincinnati, founded in 1837. This is Jessica Alba's company, the actress. Honest Company, started 5 years ago. They're now valued at $1.7 billion in 5 years. P&G. Like, everybody's used Airbnb. Imagine what Airbnb founded a couple years ago, the market cap of $22 billion, is doing to the hotel industry. This is just Hilton. Imagine what they're doing to Holiday Inn, right? Uber, everybody knows Uber, $66 billion in market cap. Columbus is full of these people. We need more of these over here. So what does that look like? Like I said, everybody in here, I'm hoping you are inspired to start your own company. At the top of the pyramid, there's this, if you want to get your startup funded, there's this organization called Drive Capital. They usually give $2 to $5 million bucks. Usually for you to get that, you have to have $50,000 in monthly reoccurring revenue. So, I mean, my startup, like I said, we're early stage founders. I don't fit that mold. So let's keep going down. NCT is another local venture fund. On all of these organizations, they'll go up and down, vary on the deal. Again, growth rate can fix all of these percentages. They require $25,000 in MRR. My company right now, my startup that I have, we don't fix that. So we don't fit that mold. What's next? There's an organization called Rev1. They'll give $20,000 to $500. Usually they'll go a little bit lower sometimes they'll go up. They require $5,000 in MRR. But what is at the bottom of this pyramid? I mentioned those accelerators earlier. All of them are for early stage founders. What is at the bottom of this pyramid? Where is that here? There's this missing void in the community. So we talked about, again, talking with people early on. So we created this at Lumos to test whether this is worth doing in Columbus. So we made this as a PDF. This is exactly what it is. Things have changed since then. I put this out, we created it, and we started distributing it to people actually. Kevin at Columbus Web Group, I think hopefully you guys might have saw this. I know at least one guy here thought about applying. We made this to validate that this is a problem actually worth going forward and solving. So we did a lot of guerrilla marketing and put this through the student organizations just like Columbus Web Group, Business Builders Club, all of these organizations to see if they're, from our research, we knew that bottom of the pyramid was missing this void. So we wanted to test that it was actually worth doing. We're all busy people, and we wanted to see if it was worth it. So we put that out. We put it out for maybe 2 months. I went around to everybody in Ohio and talked to what's going on in Cincinnati, what's going on in Cleveland. I went to New York. I went to Tennessee. I went everywhere to see if there is this void. We got 192 companies applied. That is more regionally than anybody in their first year. So some of you may have heard of the Brandery in Cincinnati. That's more than they got by quadruple, right? So there's obviously something going on here. There's all these smart people working on something, right? So we interviewed, of those 192, we interviewed 37 of them. Then we invested actually and made 8 investments in 29 founders, which you'll meet one of them in a little bit here, where we took them and put them through our program. So I mentioned the accelerator stuff earlier and how deals are done where it's very flat rated, where you could be making $5,000 a month, their technology took off and they're crushing it, making it $10,000 a month. If you got into Y Combinator, you're exactly the same, right? Regardless of where he is versus where you are. So we take each company, we evaluate them individually as they are at that stage. We give them up to $20,000. Sometimes it's a low end of 10, but we have given up to 20. We take them through a very, very how-to tactical stuff. So you got a little bit of tease. I did that for free for you guys. You're welcome. Of what we actually take our companies through. And it's very, very intense, but you're going to come out a very educated founder. And whether you fail or not, we're still going to support you because this is about people. So lastly, we take funding, and we do funding a little bit of different ways. So instead of doing that complicated convertible note that you guys all saw, we do something that's a little bit simpler called a stock option or a stock warrant. So the easiest way to explain a stock warrant is you get accepted in our accelerator for your awesome AI technology. We give you up to $20,000. For that, you give us the consideration to buy a part of your company over a short period of time, right? So the 0 equity exchanged up front like other accelerators. And we still, if we want to have a financial incentive later, we have to give you money, right? So it's a little bit different than usually what accelerators do, is it's exchange equity up front, then you get a convertible note on the back end. You might take off, you might not, who knows? It's very risky anyway. This covers us and also forces us to stay engaged with you for a long period of time, because if we're going to see any upside, we have to still give you money. Right? So it's very favorable for founders, at least we did. We interviewed over 200 people in the VC side of things, as well as the early stage entrepreneur side of things, and they all thought this was very favorable, which is why we now go forward with it. So this is what we do at Lumos. We hold you to those metrics that we talked about earlier, that venture capitalists that give you money, they care about, right? So I mentioned conversion rate, growth rate, all of those monthly recurring revenue statistics. We hold you to those each week, so then you are now qualified to talk to those people that have those $4 billion funds that, guess what, we know, right? So you're held to those each week. Then on top of that, you're forced to talk to people each week. Again, the left side of the room, they're already familiar with your stuff. Talk to them each week to figure out, if your problem or your solution is actually worth going forward with. So on top of getting, that warrant structure, this is additionally what we get for all of our startups. We have $220,000 in in-kind services. We give hosting stuff to Amazon Web Services up to $15K. Part of one of our missions was the creative community here was very segmented from the startup community. So I went again and talked to these agencies that you have listed. I was like, are you guys interested in connecting with startups? And guess what? They all are. And there's this giant gap in segmentation in Columbus that we're now bridging. All of these firms are giving $20,000 in in-kind services. We have prototyping services from a lot of local dev shops. We're also sponsored by, thank you to Create Columbus Commission. We've bring some West Coast brands like Silicon Valley Bank and Wilson Sonsini, which actually works with Bessemer, if you remember Shopify and who invested in them. They work with everybody on Sand Hill Road, from Andreessen Horowitz that invested in Airbnb. So we're bringing West Coast brands here to the States where they realize there is this talent pool where people are doing great stuff here. So we selected 8 companies, one of which is going to talk. They were originally called Rebooze. They have since changed their name to Bibe, B-Y-B-E. Drew, you want to come up?
Check. Yeah, Giant Eagle said they wouldn't partner with us if we had booze in our name, so we had to change it. So until last month, I worked for one of the largest beer and wine distributors in the United States, Heidelberg. So thank you for enjoying those libations before this. You're keeping the industry alive. And I worked in my role, I was on the national accounts team. I worked with some of the largest retailers in the United States, Kroger, Walmart, Whole Foods. And we felt that brands weren't connecting with consumers on the adult beverage side. And that reason is that Kroger, Giant Eagle, they can't legally have mail-in rebates or any online rebates available because it gives them a distinct advantage over consumers. So how in 2016 do we still exist with mail-in rebates, right? And that's the purpose. So we took a step back. Over $150 million is spent every year on the printing and shipping of mail-in rebates alone. There's a 1% to 3% redemption rate. And then take a step back even further. The only reason that these mail-in rebates exist is because they need to partner with retailers in an effort to promote product throughout their stores. So this is why we created Vibe, not Rebooze anymore. Submitted to the App Store today. And the idea is we can connect consumers to brands through our mobile app, which educates the people about the brands, and then it gives them an online rebate. And you know those mail-in rebates with the 1% to 3% redemption rate? It takes 6 weeks for those to be fulfilled. Our technology allows us to do that in 48 hours. So we partner with retailers, we send notifications for in-store tastings, and help support the execution of these retail programs that exist in stores. So we just partnered with Giant Eagle. We're presenting with Kroger on the 31st. And yeah, we're really excited about it. So we are hoping to get a seed funding round after an initial partnership. So we're pretty excited about that. So any developers, you can come talk to us or talk to Alex about it. So yeah. Anything else for me?
It's good, man.
Thank you.
So, is that off? Drew's an example. You know, he mentioned he worked at Heidelberg of fixing a problem that he had, that he saw in his industry, and guess what? There are other people doing the same thing. And he validated that there was a solution worth building without actually building anything. They just launched yesterday in the App Store. He's got, their sales funnel is insane. They have Kroger, you mentioned Giant Eagle. I really think they're gonna be pretty great here. They're one of the rock star teams of this, you know, these 8 companies, but that's not to discount any of these other ones. These are all great people. This early stage, you're investing in founders. Whether you have the wherewithal to actually go through and the entrepreneurship gauntlet that it is, and whether or not you could take things to the next level. It takes a special person to really do it. But I mean, we saw with Tobias, right? I think $164 million when the IPO is good. What's going on? Where are they? So Logistics is so they use a photo recognition scanning. Are you involved with them? Do you know the guys? So they use when you're, again, invented by 3 founders that work in the shipping industry. When you close a trailer, they have their dock workers take a picture, and it recognizes how the trailer is actually full. They're piloting with a company called John Deere, where they're actually paying for shipping of compartments that are only 60% full. So they help 3PLs, third-party logistic companies, to streamline their process. So they're talking with Worthington Industries, and they're really great. Again, it's all about the people, and these guys saw a problem in their current market, and they fixed it, right? So this is an insight to our curriculum. I haven't showed this to anybody else unless you're really, really special. We take them through a complete gauntlet for 10 weeks, and it's all based on those 4 metrics that are very individual to each of those companies, and then you launch. So I'm leaving with you 4 startup tips, right? So what is Columbus good at? We're a retail monster here, right? There's all of these great companies. Maybe if you're starting a company, it might be smart to focus on B2B or maybe retail. Maybe, I don't know. So, this is what we're good at here. So let's focus on what we're good at. Second tip, go where your customers are. These guys order food. Talk to them. And then third tip, ask them the right questions. Ask them the open-ended stuff where you can really figure out what's wrong. Is there a solution worth solving here? In person is more, I can see what this guy's face is telling me when he answers his question. When somebody is on the phone, they're going to lie to you every time because they want to get you off the phone. Look at what a telemarketer does. Hey, I'm not home, boop, boop. Right? So in person. Third tip. Oh, there's Barack. Oh, I'm sorry, fourth tip. Use the word, this P word, right? When selling B2B, Columbus is really good at retail. P word, your guys' minds are probably getting dirty. It's for pilot. When you make a retail solution that you sell directly to B2B, the word integration is daunting, right? They like this word pilot where you can really prove yourself and outperform anybody that you're working against by executing and make yourself better than anybody else. So, thank you guys. So, this deck, again, we'll upload it. I'm on the Slack channel. I would love to talk to all of you. I am hoping at least one of you wants to go forward and start your next company, and I would love to be working with you in our next class. So, thank you. Oh, yeah, so questions, let's go. Who's got them?
We have a mic too. So, yeah, everyone else can probably hear you, but the microphone is for the people on the internet. So, for the video that's recorded. So, if you're talking and you don't have a microphone, just let us know. So, lots of startups like to come up with funky names, a lot of consonants but no vowels, for example.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is there a success in a more regular sounding name?
That's a good question. So there is some statistic actually that recently was published that the name of unicorns, so the ones that are valued the most, have some short, like made-up name. But then again, I've worked with companies called Uniglobe Financial Manufacturer Solutions that are worth billions of dollars. So as long as you're fixing a problem, your name really doesn't matter. You can make a brand stick if it's worth it.
Speaking of unicorns, what do you think happened at Theranos?
I'm not a genetic scientist. I don't know, but I think they were selling a solution that they couldn't fix, but it was a big enough problem that they were able to convince all of these people to hop on board, right? So if they were able to figure that out, think about that, right? So I mean, even though they were, I don't know how much they raised, you probably know, like close to $3 billion, something stupid. They just couldn't figure it out. So, but they were able to tell a story that was worth investing in. So I think that founder is probably sitting pretty outside the lawsuits that she's about to go through. But they were able to hype it up enough, but they weren't able to figure out. So that's there's another genetic where they're adjusting genes. Anyway, we can get into that later. Happy to talk to you after. Any more questions?
When should a startup contact you? Is it after validating the idea or before?
Great question. So we require, as you guys saw, our companies to at least hit 10 interviews per week. The more people you have talked to before you talk to me, the more likely that we are to invest in you. So the more validation that you have around your product, that this is a problem worth going forward with, we're happy to help you figure out that solution and actually how to execute on that. So the answer is, we had an opening launch party. Some girl came up to me and told me her idea. I was like, talk to 100 people, and then show me that data, and let's run with it. So I would say 100. And that's very easy. I did 200 in 3 weeks for Lumos. If you have the wherewithal, you can do it.
A lot of times people say it's a crazy idea, but is it worth going for? Because for Airbnb, everyone said it's not going to work, but still they wait for it.
Airbnb.
How do you validate actually?
Yeah, so Airbnb, I think they started with actually couch surfing, right? They sounded insane, yet people were still doing it. So either me as an investor and you listen to startup podcasts all the time where these investors passed up on Uber, Airbnb, Reddit, like all of these founders. And like I said, there's 8 out of 10 still miss every time. And it's whether or not you find an investor that cares about your problem, it's a crapshoot. But if you as the founder believe in what you're solving and people are using your solution, again, like Airbnb, they started on couches, yet people kept using it week over week, month over month, and then they started renting out rooms, and then they started renting out houses. I mean, we know they're $22 billion now, so.
Someone has a great idea. They want to protect their intellectual property. How do you handle like non-disclosure agreements so that you don't take an idea and run with it after the guy's failed?
So I heard a great story. So we had one of the mentors came in. He started a company called Jiffity. He told this story that he heard from an investor in the Bay, and he was meeting with one of the original founders of eBay. He was an investor, but that investor knew the original founder of eBay. And this entrepreneur was like, hey, I have this awesome solution, but don't tell eBay. I want you to sign this non-disclosure agreement before I go forward and talk about it. That investor called up the founder of eBay and was like, hey, I'm here with this entrepreneur that's doing this thing. Do you care about what he's solving? He's like, no, we don't have time for that. So at Lumos, we don't sign NDAs. If you have a technology, you're going to outsource. You're going to outrock your competition because it's on your team. So software patents, it might be worth it. Technology patents are a whole different beast. But we don't like to sign NDAs, and all investors won't sign them either. All of them. I haven't met one that will sign it. 2 more.
So when you're out talking with people, how do you go about asking the right questions to build quantifiable data based on your solution while still just asking them about the problem, right? So
you're asking you're laying out your process, right? So you have your end solution that starts with a core problem for your end target demographic. So the easiest way to do that is you find your niche audience and you walk them through your entire process, asking exactly what problems you're solving along the way.
And I guess my question is, how do you do that without getting to the point of, oh yeah, this is such a great idea, of course I like it, right?
Yeah, so as soon as you reach to the point where because you know what your solution solves, right? When you're talking with people, you're just validating that each step along the way is actually your solution is filling those problems. So as soon as you get to the point where you think you have enough validation, then you build it. And then you put it in front of those 100 people, which are now lead gen for you, for your company, and then you ask them to use it. And you ask them to use it for free, for feedback.
And also, so through that process, you've exposed that there's a problem, right?
Yep.
How do you know that your solution is the best one for that problem?
You don't. So everything that we've talked about, you can validate your solution for free without building anything. As soon as you get to the point of building, you then bring it back to those same people and see if it actually fixes what you're working on. You might find that it doesn't, right? And then we get into UX, UI, feedback, and all that kind of stuff that actually gets people coming back again and again and again. But you've at least validated that your solution is worth going forward with just by talking to people. So you've spent nothing but your time. So one more.
So in a lot of tech startup podcasts that I listen to, they talk about trying to bootstrap your company financially for as long as you possibly can. At what point should you start seeking out funding, and what are the signs that you probably should start seeking out?
That is a great question. So you saw that Tobias in Shopify owned 14% of his company, close to 15. That's insane for the stage that he was at. And that's because he only took 3 rounds of financing because he bootstrapped it as long as he can. So he found and he built his audience, and when he got to 2010, when he needed money, he needed that money to scale and grow. So as soon as the longer you can bootstrap, the better. Because the most favorable terms you're ever going to get from an investor is if you have more people and more users using your thing than day one, right? So like I can go and raise, I'd say I have 100 customers. I can go and raise now, but I'm going to get worse terms from an investor than I will if I have 500 or 1,000. So the longer you can wait, the better. And actually bootstrapping is, if you can do it and you're able to do it to profitability, it's worth doing without taking outside capital, for sure. Good question. Did it? All right, guys. Thank you. Again, let's talk after.